Paramahamsa Parividagacharya Astatara Satyasi Simad His Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada Ki Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya We'll be reading this morning from Canto 2, Chapter 7, Text 46. Some of you have access on your handheld device for that verse. 2:7:46. If you have the verse, we can chant responsively. What's the meter? Devai vadanti atititaracha devamayam Shri Sudrahuna Shabara Apipapa Jiva. Okay. Devai vadanti Tevai vadantya titaranti cha devamayam Shri Shudrahuna Shabara Apipapa Jiva Yadya Bhuta Krama Parayana Shila Shiksha Tiryag Jana Apikim Urushruta Dharanaye. Go up a little bit. Tevai Vadantya Titaranti Cha Deva Mayam Sri Shudrahuna Shabara Apipapa Jiva Yad Bhuta Krama Parayana Shila Shikshas Tiryag Jana Apikam Ushruta Dharanaye. Premananda. Devai Vivalanti Titaranti Cha Devamayam Sri Shudrahona Shabara Apipapa Jiva Yad Adbhuta
Devai Vedanti Adhikaranti Cha Devamayam
Devai Vadanti Titaranti Cha Devamayam
Sudrahuna Sahara Pipapa Jiva Yad Bhuta Krama Parayana Sila Siksha Tirya Jana Pikimu Dharanaye Devai Vidanti Atitaranti Cha Devamayam
Devai Vedantya Titaranti Cha Devamayam Sri Shudrahona Shabara Apipapa Jiva Yad
जना अपि किं सुसुत धारणायै
Devai vadanti titaranti cha deva mayam. Si shudrahona shabara api papa jiva. Te, such persons, by undoubtedly, Vedanti, do know, Atitaranti, surpass, Cha, also, Devamaya, the covering energy of the Lord, Stri, such as women, Shudra, the laborer class of men, Huna, the mountaineers, Shabara, the Siberians, or those lower than the Shudras. Api, although, Papa Jiva, sinful living beings, Yadi, provided, Adbhuta Prama, one whose acts are so wonderful, Parayana, those who are devotees, Shila, behavior, Shikshaha, trained by, Tiryak Jana, even those who are not human beings. Api, also, him, what? To speak of, Shruta Dharana, those who have taken to the idea of the Lord by hearing about him. Yea, those, interesting verse, surrendered souls, even from the groups leading sinful lives, such as women laborer class, mountaineers, and Siberians, or even the birds and beasts, can know about the science of Godhead and become liberated from the clutches of the illusory energy by surrendering unto the pure devotees of the Lord and by following in their footsteps in devotional service. And there's no explanation of this birds and beasts. But here's the purport. Sometimes there are inquiries as to how one can surrender unto the Supreme Lord in Bhagavad Gita 1866. The Lord asked Arjuna to surrender unto him, and therefore persons unwilling to do so question where God is and to whom they should surrender. The answer to such questions or inquiries is given herein very properly. The personality of Godhead may not be present before one's eyes, but if one is sincere in wanting such guidance, the Lord will send him a bona fide person who can guide one properly back home, back to Godhead. There's no need of material qualification for making progress on the path of spiritual realization. In the material world, when one accepts some particular type of service, he is required to possess some particular type of qualification also. Without this, one is unfit for such service. But in the devotional service of the Lord, the only qualification required is surrender. Surrendering oneself is in one's own hand. If one likes, he can surrender immediately, without delay. And that begins his spiritual life. The bona fide representative of God is as good as God himself, or in other words, the loving representative of the Lord is more kind and more easy to approach. A sinful soul cannot approach the Lord directly, but such a sinful man can very easily approach a pure devotee of the Lord. And if one agrees to put himself under the guidance of such a pure devotee, such a devotee of the Lord, he can also understand the science of God and can also become like the transcendental pure devotee of the Lord and thus get his liberation back to Godhead, back home for eternal happiness. Paragraph. So, realization of the science of Godhead and relief from the unnecessary, useless struggle for existence are not at all difficult for the willing candidate, but they're very difficult for persons who are not surrendered souls, but only simple, profitless speculators. I have here commentary by Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, and he quotes, as you can guess what he's going to quote. This is the same verse, gives the verse in his translation. Women Shudras, Hunas, Shabras, and other sinfully born persons are also certainly cross over the material world and know the Lord if they learn about the qualities of the devotees of the Lord. If even animals can understand, how much more quickly can humans who hear from the mouth of Guru understand the Lord? Paragraph. Not only those great persons, but even lower persons have realized his powers. If they learn about the qualities of those devotees who have surrendered to the Supreme Lord, who takes great steps, Urukrama, if they learn about devotees who do not discriminate between high and low, they also know the powers of the Lord, even if they are swans, elephants, parrots, or cranes. Tiryag Jana. What then to speak of how quickly humans who hear the name and form of the Lord from the mouth of a guru can know the Lord? Now, this is not a verse that Prabhupada would often quote, but the one that he would often quote is also from the second canto, Kiratu Ninda Polanda Pokrisha, that verse. And the word for word meaning of the hunas is a little different. Let's see if I can find that verse quickly. There we go. Huna, part of Germany and Russia. Now that's Canto 2, Chapter 4. And we're in Canto 2, Chapter 7. Of this, Kirata is a province of old Bharata, Kirata. Huna, part of Germany, the Huns. That's Western nomenclature, the Huns. Part of Germany and Russia. Andhra, guess where that is? Polinda is the Greeks. Polkasha, another province. Abira, part of Old Sind. Shumbha, another province. Yavana, the Turks. Kusha, Adaya, the Mongolian. Kusha Desh, Mongolians, and others, Papa. So here is what Prabhupada writes in the purport. Pune, the area of East Germany and part of Russia, is known as the province of the Hunas. Accordingly, sometimes a kind of hill tribe is known as the Hunas. He goes into it about the Greeks from Mahabharata. This country was conquered by Bhimasena and Sahadev. The Greeks are also known as Pulindas. And it is mentioned in the Vana Parva of Mahabharata that the non-Vedic race of this part of the world would rule over the world. This Pulinda province was also one of the provinces of Bharata, and the inhabitants were classified amongst the Kshatriya kings, but later on, due to their giving up the Brahminical culture, they were mentioned as Mlechas, parentheses, just as those who are not followers of Islamic culture are called kafirs, and those who are not followers of Christian culture are called heathens. Let's go to Yavanas, because we often hear about the Yavanas. Yavana was the name of one of the sons of Maharaj Yayati. Those who attended the class yesterday evening know about Yayati. Yadu was one of Yayati's sons. But Yavana was another name of one of Yayati's sons, who was given the part of the world known as Turkey to rule. Therefore, the Turks are Yavanas, due to being descendants of Maharaj Yavana. The Yavanas were therefore Kshatriyas, and later on, by giving up the Brahminical culture, they became Mlecha Yavanas. Descriptions of the Yavanas are in the Mahabharata. A prince called Turvasu was also known as Yavana from Adi Parva, and his country was conquered by Sahadev, one of the Pandavas. The western Yavanas joined with Duryodhana in the Battle of Kurukshetra under the pressure of Krsna. It was foretold that these Yavanas would conquer India, and it proved to be true. Kasha, this is China. The inhabitants of Kashadesh are mentioned in Mahabharata, Drona Parva. Those who have stunted growth of the hair of the upper lip are generally called Kashas or Kasas. As such, the Kasas are the Mongolians, the Chinese, and others who are so designated. Now, that verse is saying that all these personalities can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord. Due to his being the supreme power. Canto 2, Chapter 4, Text 18. So over here, we're having Canto 2, Chapter 7, Text 46, saying something quite similar. Now, the description of the Shabaraz, at least I'm accustomed to hearing the Shabaraz in a different way in relation to the story of Jagannath, pig farmers, the Shabaraz. But here it's mountaineers, the Siberians, or in general, those lower than the Shudras, and the Hunas, the mountaineers. So it's slightly different, but that's okay. Same point. They can know about the science of Godhead and become liberated from the clutches of illusory energy by surrendering unto the pure devotees of the Lord. Now, specifically, they can become liberated is one thing, and another thing is to know about the science of Godhead. So all of that's fine, except for this one phrase here that's the those that are lower than human beings. Tir yak jana, even those who are not human beings. And in the translation, Prabhupada's translation, birds and beasts. Now, many, that's three manys times, Prabhupada would say animals can't come and attend discourse on Bhagavad Gita and understand it. Many times. Which is commonly true. Invariably true. But this verse is saying otherwise. Now, what's the understanding of, what's an example? Here, one celebrated example is the dog of Shivananda Singh. Anyone not know the story? Do you know the story? You know who Shivananda Singh is? You know who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is? Yes. So the devotees from Bengal would go in large group every year to attend the Jagannath Rath Yatra. They'd make a journey all the way from Bengal down to Puri. And the person who would organize their activities was Shivananda Singh. Am I right? Shivananda Singh? So Shivananda Singh was magnanimous, wealthy, and a really good organizer. So one of the things that happened along the way is there was a stray dog. A street dog in India is not so uncommon. And he started taking care of the dog like one of their entourage. He wanted to make sure that the dog was being well fed every day, every evening. And one evening, the dog was missing. So he sent many persons in all directions to look for the dog. They couldn't find the dog. He felt badly. The dog didn't get his meal. Then when they reached Puri, Shivananda Singh went, after settling everybody, he went to pay his obeisances to Mahaprabhu. And when he came before Mahaprabhu, he saw something very astonishing. Mahaprabhu had coconut pulp. And he was having the dog chant Hare Krishna. And when the dog would chant Hare Krishna, Mahaprabhu would throw him some coconut pulp. The dog would take the coconut pulp. And Shivananda saw this. And he came before the dog and paid his obeisances to the dog, being a recipient of Mahaprabhu's mercy. Now, it doesn't say that the dog understood the science of bhakti, on the one hand, but on the other hand, being eager for the association of a devotee, what to speak of Mahaprabhu, and taking the remnants of food from the devotee, Mahaprabhu, that's the essence. Similar to what we hear about Prahlad in his previous life, an insignificant nobody, son of a Shudrani, and he received the remnants of the food from the Bhaktivedantas. So he went from an obscure nobody to a perfected soul. I mean, it wasn't just the prasad; he also heard discourses. Another possible example one can point to is the second life of Bharata Maharaj as a deer. He would sit wherever there was discourse of the sages and hear the discourse. And apparently, he could understand what the discourse was, although he was in the body of a deer. Now, generally, animals aren't welcome in an assembly of Vaishnavas hearing, but sometimes it happens. There's a nice story. There's two nice stories, contemporary stories. There's a story of a kirtan party in somewhere in South America, a big city. Forget the name of the big city. I think somewhere in Argentina. And they had kirtan on a regular basis in a popular public square. And when they would assemble for the kirtan, a dog would come, and the dog would dance when they would have kirtan. And when the kirtan was finished, he would pay obeisances. And this happened on a regular basis. They didn't always go to the same spot. Whenever they went to that spot, the dog was there. And he did the same thing. So, did he understand the science of Krishna? Because that's what it says. One can also know about the science of Godhead. Well, knowing about the science of Godhead can be very simple. You surrender to Krishna. And hear Krishna Katha, or hear the holy name. So, in that sense, because there's no explanation given by our acharyas about this, they can also know about the science of Godhead. That is, take the association of devotees, hear a spiritual sound, take Krishna prasadam, and become enlivened in Krishna consciousness. So it's remote. But there are some examples, and the main point, aside from that detail, is unqualified. It's very important because the Smarta Brahmins strongly hold a different opinion that one can engage in elevated devotional service only by certain qualifications that are based on birth. Very common. Very common. I don't know if maybe because you're in Indian bodies, you haven't encountered that. But I remember the first time we visited, a group of us from New York visited Jagannath Puri. We visited Jagannath Puri because one of the devotees who had lived in New York was serving Gaur Govinda Maharaj in Bhubaneswar, Bhagavat Das. And so, because we knew him from New York, we went to visit Puri in the company of Bhagavat Das. And when we went to Puri, one of the things we did, of course, one of the things we didn't do was we didn't go in the temple, but he took us to different places around Puri because he knew the places, because he lived in Bhubaneswar and often went to Puri. So as we were traveling around Puri, we would have kirtan, as ISKCON devotees commonly do. And because the sand was really hot, we wore our sandals. Now, we had to hear from Bhagavat Das, what was meant by, as we were passing by, they were pointing to our feet. And he explained they're pointing to our feet because when you're chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, you're not supposed to wear shoes. And there was, some pandas standing in front with their arms folded, nodding and smiling. We thought they were approving. But their message, he told us, because they did, I don't remember if they spoke English or spoke their local language, and he translated it. They said, keep doing this, and in your next life you can be born in India, and then you can make some, you can come see Lord Jagannath. So very strongly in the bodily conception of life. And one who's in the bodily conception of life, there are restrictions from those who can experience and do and participate in and receive. And however, the Bhagavatam is clearly not in favor of that idea. So where does that other idea come from? It comes from other portions of the Vedas that give that kind of emphasis. And it's it's clearly contrary to the conception of Bhagavad Gita that we're not the body, but where there's those who identify with the body, there's some encouragement for those who identify with the body how to become gradually elevated in various ways. And so they can get a better birth and a better birth. And the progressive system that's found within Vedic wisdom, the Vedic texts. So the Bhagavatam is the transcendental literature. It doesn't support that idea. It doesn't it overrules in the sense like a higher court can overrule a lower court, like that. It doesn't bash, but it elevates and it discounts or discredits, or so many other requirements are not the requirements for the highest stage. So indicating in the pious stage, Shruta Dharana, those who have taken to the idea of the Lord by hearing about him. So that's in the word for word, Shruta. And in the translation, by surrendering unto pure devotees to the Lord and by following in their footsteps in devotional service. Now the emphasis in the verse is hearing, and it doesn't appear in the translation. Become liberated from the clutches of the illusory energy by surrendering unto the pure devotees of the Lord and by following in their footsteps in devotional service. Here's one more story that I personally experienced. I shared this the other day. One of the persons in the audience really liked it, so I'll repeat it. For a number of years, I was participating in the Vrindavan Institute for Higher Education, VIHE, and it lasts for 1 month, mainly during the Kartik month. And during the Kartik month, during any month, there's 2 Ekadasis. So it was a practice of devotees, not just the VIHE devotees, but the devotees in Vrindavan. On Ekadasi morning, right after Mangalarti and Tulsi Puja, a group of devotees would go out the front gate, make a right-hand turn, and follow the Vrindavan Parikrama Marg, the path. It takes a little over an hour, between an hour and an hour and a half, depending on how fast you walk. And we would chant japa. every Ekadasi. So for 3 years, after that, the dog wasn't there anymore. Apparently he left his body. But every Ekadasi, he was sitting like dogs sit with their front legs forward and waiting for the devotees to come to the gate. Very, very punctual. And we went out the gate and he wagged his tail and he was the lead. And he followed us all the way around. The Vrindavan, so there's Vrindavan, parikram, there's big, 30-day event, but there's also a small circle just around Vrindavan town. It's a path. And it starts or it passes by right very close to the Krsna Balaram temple, just a few blocks down, and you make a right-hand turn, and there you go. And the dog was out front, like, the guard dog. He was doing some service. He wasn't chanting, but he was doing some service. And there's a place, this southern side of that Parikrama Marg, where there's like an abandoned temple. And in that abandoned temple area, there's like a big field in front of it, and it's a hangout place for dogs. And dogs are territorial, right? So if you come in their territory, they're going to let you know. Woof, woof, stay away from our territory. So the dogs would come out, and our lead friend, dog, knew exactly, what the program was. And so 5 or 6 of them would come out and start, woofing, woof, woof, woof. And he, stood up very tall, and the hair on the back of his neck was stood up and growling and showing his teeth and, keeping them away until we passed. And then he trotted on and went back to the lead. And we followed us all the way around till we got to the front gate of Krsna Balaram temple. And we went in the gate, and he paid us obeisances. And then went wherever he stayed, I don't know. And it's 2 times, 2 Ekadasis. I don't know what he does the rest of the month, but 2 Ekadasis, there he was for 3 years. So that's one way of understanding. He has an understanding of the science of Krishna. Now, I don't know if he observed Ekadasi the way that we observe Ekadasi, but the speculation was he was a devotee and he made some offense, so he took birth in an animal form. And in his animal form, he still retained, by some super soul arrangement, some appreciation for Krishna and, attachment to the devotees, and wanted to serve the devotees and be with the devotees and observe Ekadasi in some manner or another. So it was impressive. It made a strong impression. Who knows? The living entities that are in Vrindavan are unique. No, they do wild things too. Monkeys steal glasses and, another thing. They're not all well behaved. But by service, association with and service to devotees, they can become elevated. And so it's the emphasis is not so much on the animals, it's just the principle. Those who are less fortunate, for whatever the reasons, to take birth in such and such situation, that's not a disqualifier. Because the higher principle is the qualifier. And Prabhupada stood by that. He took a lot of negativity from people who are followers of, you don't do this, you don't do that with people that aren't born in India or aren't born in a Brahmin family, and don't have those kinds of by birth qualifications. That it's not by birth qualification. And he stood by it. So let's hear if there's some discussion. 8:15. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for those stories. They're very inspiring and comforting. Where I'm struggling, it doesn't matter. It's a Lord's mercy, devotees' mercy is there in my life. Guru Maharaj, as you were describing the Shivananda Sen's dog story, I felt this is really interesting that Shivananda Sen, my understanding is, because of his mercy and his compassion, being with the devotees and taking prasadam, the dog would have got the qualification to come and receive Lord's mercy. But turning around, Shivananda Sen going and offering obeisances to the dog, I felt it's really very moving to the heart. He's not taking any credit. Oh yeah, I did it, so that's why he's getting it.
Yes. He was understanding this dog got the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And if I could get Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to throw coconut pulp to me, how fortunate. He's humble and soft-hearted, very qualified, and also very humble. There's other examples of his humility and his transcendental realization. Others?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, if someone has some devotional credit, has been practicing all their life, but knowingly or unknowingly has been committing offenses, but they don't know they have been doing that, what would be the outcome of that in this lifetime as well as in the lifetimes to come?
My answer is it depends. And the deciding personality is the personality of Godhead, but the deciding personality may also be the devotee. But even let's say the devotee is someone is offended and they don't take offense, then the personality of Godhead, particularly Nama Prabhu, may not forgive. So it depends. It depends on the condition of heart of that person and the severity of the offense and the consistency of the offense and the thoughtlessness behind the offense. So it depends. There's variables. The opportunity can be given for that person to become repentant before they leave this world. So there's things, there's variables, and it depends. Okay? Hare Krishna. You have something? That's it?
I was contemplating, Guru Maharaj. I don't know if I can say it well. From this verse about unqualified persons taking shelter, surrendering to the pure devotees, can know the signs of Krishna. Like during the process of surrender or during the process of understanding, some of the habits of lower nature just don't go away. They are so sticky, and I wonder the impact of those traits, on the progress of the person. Like I'm talking about myself.
Okay, well, traits that don't go away will stay. And as long as they stay, then they block. It doesn't block, it's like clouds covering the sun. Depending upon the thickness of the clouds and the configuration of the clouds and so forth, the types of clouds, they can block the sun more or less. Generally speaking, clouds and tendencies undergo, sometimes they're more prominent, sometimes they're less prominent, just like now it's raining, so there's more clouds. So, and darker clouds. It changes, but it will definitely block progress, which is the essence of your question. Now, what's the chance then if they're very stubborn and hard to remove, and they keep appearing at least from time to time? Then comes the what to do, and the what to do is just continue faithfully and this is celebrated verse, often quoted verse, where Krishna speaks on this point. I'm sure you're aware in Uddhava Gita. Such tendencies, one acknowledges them and goes on with devotional service in the hope that Krishna will be kind and help remove. So that's the patience part and the acceptance part. And then the remedy part is not just carry on with complacency, but try to one's capacity to strengthen the core activities of devotional practice, sadhana bhakti, with some consistency. Part of the difficulty, some experience or some realization, some observation, is submission is intermittent in the unsteady stage. So submission or effort needs to become consistent, steady. So when it's not steady, then the coming and going of unpleasant tendencies will continue. And therefore, the antidote is striving for consistency in application. Because A and B, I don't like those tendencies. And B, I see them as obstacles for being in Krishna's shelter unconditionally. So I want my eagerness to be with Krishna is a factor. My eagerness to get on the other side of such tendencies is another factor towards steadiness of application. Complacency is easy, and that's more common. I'm okay. And then there's different stages of that kind of shrugging the shoulders, and I'm okay. Or, trying more conscientiously and diligently for some time, and then again, complacency. So the unsteady bhakti is there, and to get from unsteady to steady, consistent application with a very clear sense of purpose on both the negative and the positive side. Overcoming the negative is secondary. The primary is making the Krishna connection strong. Okay. Yeah.
But if one person is in human form of life, one is supposed to make that conscientious effort. But if someone is not capable of making,
You say not capable. What does that mean?
meaning
It's
like
unwilling. It's not capable. They're making a conscious choice. It's not not capable. One consistently makes the choice of complacency. That's a choice. It's not a not able.
Some people are not able because there may be some complete blindness.
Well, that's a choice also. The consequence of past choice what you're the question you're asking is right on the topic of this morning's class, and I'll just say it again. There isn't a material obstacle. You say can't, I say choice. Say it the other way. If someone has like her question, someone has a tendency that just keeps coming and coming and coming. No, they can say, I can't help myself. I'm lusty. I can't help myself. Fire and butter. I can't help myself. That's a choice.
An intelligent person who has got all the faculties together, it is a choice. But there may be someone who don't have that type of a discriminative intelligence or ability.
Krishna can give it. Krishna can give it. You're taking the position that's contrary to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I can't agree with you. There's no material qualification, disqualification. Ahaitokiya pratiyata. No material qualification, disqualification stands. Bhakti is stronger. And take any example. Somebody's deaf. The sound vibration still acts. And somebody is retarded. The sound vibration still acts. It's just have to be a spirit soul. That's pretty much everybody. I don't know anybody that's not a spirit soul. So just be a spirit soul. And here, no, there may be lesser obstacles, greater obstacles, yes. But it's not cannot. That's not the cannot is it bounces from Srimad Bhagavatam's message.
Words, specifically speaking even about animals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So animals, I feel like in Shivani was kind of dog case. He was he was the recipient of the mercy of the Lord.
Yes, he was.
But in human form of life, we have to have some conscientious effort, right? I mean, it's not like an animal. A human being is...
Well, a person who's like an animal can become human-like. You don't keep arguing the same point because you're going to lose. There's no material qualification, disqualification. Srila Prabhupada ki?
Yeah.